In the continuing effort of TFA to bring you face to face with legislators from across the state, here is the latest interview regarding the special session and the push by the governor for a red flag law. Today we have with us Representative Clay Doggett. Can you tell us what district you represent and what your committee assignments are?
Well, good morning, Richard. I have the great pleasure of serving the 70th district, which is comprised of all of Giles County, portions of Lawrence, and portions of Lincoln County. I also have the great honor of serving as the chair of the Criminal Justice Subcommittee. I also serve on the Elections and Campaign Finance Subcommittee, as well as the full local committee.
What are your thoughts regarding the need for the special session that Governor Lee has demanded?
Well, Richard, I don't think there is a need. I know, and I've been saying this for several months now. When back during session, he was urging the legislature before we adjourned for the year to consider some of these red flag bills that had been proposed by the Democrats. During that time, it was already past the bill filing deadline. Committees were already closing. The committee on which I served on, Criminal Justice Subcommittee, had already closed at this point when he was urging for us to consider these proposals. It was not. I'd made it clear that I did not want to reopen that committee to hear this egregious attack on the rights of the citizens of our state, and so. Since that point, I've been saying when he announced originally it was going to be sometime in May, then it was maybe sometime in July, and then the potential date of August 21st has been thrown around, and there's been no official call for that yet. But what I've said is if it can wait until August, it can wait until January when we come back into session. And then he can bring his own administrative package like he offers every year, and that could be included in it, and we could have a consideration of it then in the full committee process as we go through. But special sessions are different, and I've been a part of, I think, 4 or at least 3 since I've been in the legislature over the last 5 years. When you have the special session, committee shakeup is completely different. The speakers appoint the committees, and so when you go in, you may have served on the Criminal Justice Committee or the Civil Justice Committee or the Health Committee or whatever committee that you've served during regular session, and you may find yourself not on one of those committees where this legislation is going to be considered. That's another thing that you always have to consider when you have these special sessions, that there is a shakeup of the committees a lot of times. To have us come back in August, we wouldn't know what bill that or what committee that bill would go through to be heard. It may go through criminal, it may go through civil, it may go through health, it could go through state government. You really don't know where that bill would find itself. And even then, you don't even know who's going to be the makeup of those committees. And so I think right now, my personal opinion is this needs to wait until January when we come back into session and go from there.
At this time, what are your thoughts regarding the red flag law or extreme risk protection order that Governor Lee is seeking, which allows the government to seize guns from individuals who presently can legally own and possess them?
Well, it's a very dangerous proposal. I know people have cited a lot of other states, such as Florida, for example. There was a shooting in Florida. The legislature came in with a knee-jerk reaction. They passed these ERPOs down there. There is a provision within that law that says that you have an opportunity to appeal to get your rights restored to you. From the research that I've done, less than 1% of those cases have actually been repealed in court. You're going to find is good, honest people are going to have their rights taken away at a whim, at a simple allegation of something that has not come to fruition. Now, there's always going to be times where crimes are committed, and that's one of the side effects of committing a crime is that you lose certain rights and privileges when you do that. this, you have committed no crime. It's just simply an allegation, a feeling, a thought that someone has that says that you may, and may is the key word, you may be a threat to society. And so they send out the sheriff's department to confiscate your firearms. If you're a man and you live in a home and you're married and your spouse, they take all the firearms from the home, not just what you own, but all firearms from the home. Those firearms could belong to your wife. My wife has firearms that are hers. They're not mine. All the firearms from my home, including that of my wife's and my 12-year-old son, who is an avid hunter, he likes to shoot. They would take everything that he had. The Henry Golden Boy that I get for my kids that I put up in the closet to keep as a keepsake, those would be gone too. And then we're unclear as to what the process is for you in these proposals to get those firearms back. So if I can't have them, can my wife and my children have them, even though I'm living in the home with them? Depending on the way that this law or bill could be written, I may have to leave my home just so that my wife and children can have their firearms for protection and for recreational purposes.
What alternatives to a red flag or ERPO law do you think should be considered by the legislature?
That's a good question. I know a lot of people have talked about looking at mental health. My thing is you look for ways to prevent crime, and that is not by going in and taking away someone's firearms just based off of allegations. You know, a man told me a couple of weeks ago in the United States, there's over 250,000 laws when you look at all 50 states and territories that deal with firearms. Crime happens every day. There's evil in the world. And if we want to stop crime from happening, we've got to eradicate evil. A lot of times people that perform these acts of violence, there may not be indicators as to what they do in the workplace or in schools or shopping malls. Sometimes there are indicators that people see and they fail to pick up on, but no one really knows what someone's going to do. And so at the end of the day, I really don't know what alternatives that we could find to do this, and instead of making people aware of signs and symptoms of cases of mental illness. Maybe someone has been suicidal. Maybe someone has talked about killing someone in the past, but those are not reasons at that point, I believe, to go in and confiscate their firearms just because of something that they've said. People say things all the time that some might misconstrue as being a threat. But how many times have we said, oh man, sometimes they make me so mad, I just want to hurt somebody. I mean, people say things like that all the time. And for someone to come in and take your firearms away from you and your home and all your family members that you reside with is not right. It's not right. And I don't know that there is a way to go forward that's constitutional. The Constitution is very, very clear as to what it says and when it says that you have that right to keep and bear arms. And there's cases that, a lot of your viewers are certainly aware of with the Bruin decision that's come down. A lot of the laws that we've seen, not only in our state, but other states, where legislatures have enacted laws based off an interpretation of our Constitution. The Bruin case has said, no, you are incorrect on that. You've got to go back to when the Constitution was written, when the founders drafted that, when they signed it and the states ratified it. This is what the law is to be, and what you've got on your books is incorrect.
Do you have any other thoughts on these issues?
Well, I could sit here and talk about it all day probably, but, the big thing is I want to encourage people, if we do have this session, to please reach out to your legislators. Let them know. I know that if it was to come up in August, that there are going to be a lot of people, a lot of eyes across the country are looking at Tennessee. And a lot of people are going to flock to Tennessee, and they're going to come and they're going to storm the Capitol to be there to make their voices heard. And so I would encourage anyone that's watching your video series that they would make sure to reach out to their legislators and let them know how they feel. Let them know that they have support of the people at home. Everyone that I talk to here in my district and even across the state think that this is a very, very bad idea. It's certainly a slippery slope. And I don't want to be like other states. I don't want to be like Florida or New York or even Texas or other states that have some version of these laws. I think that Tennessee needs to stay the way it is. And if we're going to fight crime, we need to go after criminals and not good law abiding citizens.
Well, Representative, we really appreciate your time coming on. I know your life is busy like mine. For you to take your time out and come to give the membership of TFA and anybody else watching the series your thoughts on it is very helpful. We appreciate it very much, and hopefully we'll have you back on for another discussion later on.
Well, I look forward to it, Richard. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today.
If you learned something today that was beneficial, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps get our message out and sell the brand. Check back for more content as often as you can. You can find our website at www.tennesseefirearms.com. If you are new there, click the subscribe button on that page as well to receive free email updates about issues that affect your Second Amendment rights in Tennessee.